That's a very difficult thing to do. I mean, Einstein spent most of his life working on it, and this I think that if this occur, and I believe we're very close to it, I believe actually that the work I've done with the Schwarzschild proton with the black hole atom is a very powerful step in that direction, that there's a possibility that when we understand these fundamental dynamics of physics, the change in their society will be tremendous. From philosophical change and social change, but as well very advanced technological changes.
Absolutely. Now, you've talked about what is called the power of spin. Explain that. What does that mean?
Well, that's another thing that, in general, in physics, is not well explained. Is the spin component of our universe? For instance, if you ask, what's spinning the Earth? Well, you'll be told that it's conserved energy from the spin of our solar system because the sun is spinning. And then if you ask, well, what's spinning the sun? Then you'd be told it's conserved from the galactic spin. And then if you ask, well, what's spinning the galaxy? Then you'd be told, well, the cluster and the supercluster. And eventually you'd get back to the Big Bang. And that doesn't really tell you where spin came from.
And does every object out there spin?
It seems to be,
Isn't that weird all by itself? Every star, every planet, everything spins.
That's right. And even the atoms that you're made of, and that's a lot of atoms, billions and billions of atoms, and they're all spinning very close to the speed of light. And that's really remarkable because they're spinning continuously for billions and billions and billions of years. And so for me, it was not adequate to say, well, it all started spinning in the Big Bang, and we're not going to tell you where the energy came from to do that. And it's been spinning ever since in a frictionless environment because our environment is just not frictionless. There's all sorts of frictions in our universe, field interactions, plasma, and all this stuff. And so for me, I thought, no, there must be a source to the spin of everything. And I started to look at Einstein's equations of space-time, and I started to realize that torque and Coriolis effect had been removed from those equations. And so with the help of Dr. Rauscher and Dr. Hyson, we've put spin or torque and Coriolis effect back into space-time to explain the origin of spin, the source of the spin of everything. Really, it really becomes the source of life because everything spins into existence. And so it's like, think of it of like almost like space-time as a fluid spinning. And when it makes little eddy currents, when it makes little vortices, we see it as an atom or a particle.
What would happen if nothing spun?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, that's the thing. It may be a frame of reference thing. If nothing spun, it might be because you're spinning with it. So, I believe actually that there is zero spin at singularity, that when you reach that infinite nature at the center of the atom, that's like the center of the eye of the hurricane, where there's no wind.
Right, and it's calm.
Yeah, exactly. That's what centers our universe. That's what centers our galaxies, that centers our atoms, and so on, the stillness.
So is there a stillness in our universe somewhere?
Yeah, at the center of all things.
You believe that, right in the middle?
Yes, absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah, just like a hurricane, or a tornado, and it's a dynamic between spin and stillness that produces the feedback structure that makes information continuously flow through our universe, and the system self-organized that way, highly self-organized.
Okay, atoms are inanimate; they aren't alive, correct?
Right. Well,
I mean,
depends how you describe life.
They don't eat. They don't die. They're just they're not rest. So here's my question.
Yes.
When an egg is fertilized and it turns into a baby, and the baby is born, okay?
Yeah.
Are there more atoms in that body than when it first started? That's my first question.
Yes, absolutely, because there is duplication of cells and there is nutrients that are being agglomerated to produce the duplication of cells. So, we all started with one cell, and interestingly, we go through a very similar evolution that the monocellular system went through on Earth through its evolution to become, very complex multicellular system. We all went through that same evolution when we were, conceived from one cell that doubled up and so on, and eventually to produce the 100 trillion cells of our body, which are made out of billions of atoms.
Okay, but here's my question: if these atoms then that aren't alive, and I'm thinking of alive in our terms,
yes,
and we have zillions of them in a child that become a human being, a grown full-size human being, when that person passes on and becomes rubble and dust and decays, what happens to the rest of those atoms that were there in that human? Zillions of them, and now the body's gone. Where are they?
Well, that's an interesting concept, an interesting thing to think about, because when you think about it, you could say that you're shedding millions of cells every minute.
Right.
And each cell is made of a lot of atoms. So you're basically constantly shedding a trail of atoms throughout your life.
But they don't die, right?
The atoms don't die.
No, so where do they go?
They continuously spin. They retain a state of relationship to other atoms in which they change phase. For instance, they may go back to the soil and become soil, or be digested by a worm, and they continuously. This is why I believe we live in this infinite feedback structure of creation, is that you can't actually find anything to disappear. You just see changes in the states of things. So all the atoms that you've always been made of, all the way through your life, and all the atoms you will be made of when you die, will still continue to do what they do, which is change state and recycle themselves, and they might end up in another human being not so far down the road.
Or in a soul.
Yeah. Well, then the soul is another subject. You got to look at the atomic structure as a self-organizing system. What would be the soul? Well, maybe the soul is the information that's gathered by such a system, the information that makes up you. And that information is conserved as well. It most likely continues on, and there's no reason to think that it would not reorganize in another set of atoms at one point.
Do you think Einstein went through this same little perplexing thought mode?
I'm sure he did. When you read Einstein and when you study his life, I think Einstein was a great philosopher, a great thinker, and he was certainly not limited to the conventional views of physics, and that's what made him Einstein.
Getting back to your theory again of spin, as it's tied, let's say, to the creation of all of this. Mm-hmm. Again, to me, and I keep harping back at this, even though we're not talking about harp anymore. It just sounds like it was planned. It was designed. I'm not trying to have you say you believe in God. I'm not asking you that at all. Uh-huh. But it just sounds like there's way too much intelligence behind this. Somebody or something knew what it was doing. Yes.
Well, that's what I believe, is that the universe knows what it's doing. This is why it's highly organized. It's like there is this underlying self-organizing energy that connects all things, and that's why it knows where everything is, because every little protons of every little atom is connected to all other protons in all of the universe. And some of the math I just written in that Schwarzschild paper proves that.